The Divine Bitch Podcast. Wake up, be aware, and live your life fully. Welcome to a new episode of the Divine Bitch Podcast. Join us when we journey into awareness, explore what it truly means to wake up, expand your consciousness, and live your life with presence.
Trauma shapes you in silence until it is seen. This episode we'll be talking about trauma and conditioning. Mm-hmm. Another sentence that I have is, conditioning is not identity.
Mm-hmm. What does that do to me?
What does it open up?
Yes. Why I love trauma. And it may seem weird to be able to love trauma, but for me, trauma and spirituality are one. Trauma and spirituality come from a source where you transform. And a personality or conditioning is actually, how shall I say this correctly? It's actually the thing that wants to prevent you to grow from trauma. Something like that. Because we all experience trauma to a certain extent. I mean, we are human beings with feelings and we are never identical to other human beings. So obviously there will be things that happen in our field that feel like painful to us, and that's part of life. And conditioning is often the non-acceptance of that. It's the wanting to not experience that because somehow, as a human being, you want to be able to blame others. Somehow you want to project feelings on others. But I feel that trauma is probably one of the biggest transformative experiences that you can have as a human being on Earth. So if you can see it from that angle, it brings a lot of growth instead of damaging your nature.
And isn't trauma more about finding ways to survive? Because probably the experience you had was too intense on physical, mental, emotional, energetic level or experience that you have to find a way to survive.
Yeah. I think the traumatic experience in itself is often not the reason why we survive. It's usually the suppressing of what happens afterwards that makes us survive. Because if we have immediate support when a trauma occurs, it actually transforms us as human beings. But unfortunately, we don't always have that support line. Yeah? So what happens is we experience something that goes beyond this. The bodies cannot necessarily deal with it. We don't get enough help from people who are experiencing it to tell us to breathe, to accept what happens. And then often we go into a survival mode. Then often we suppress feelings. Then often we control a lot of things. Then often our bodies shut down. And then we get in trouble. I don't know exactly what the event was called, but you will all remember probably there was this island in Scandinavia where somebody actually killed a large group of children who were, on a trip on this island. And there was a lot of studies done. The severely traumatized people who had physical injuries, who lost their legs or who lost their eyesight or who actually were shot multiple times, they had very limited mental problems. And the adverse was true as well. So the people who had very minor injuries, they were all struggling severely mentally. They were not always capable of continuing their lives afterwards. And so they investigated what happened. And the reason for it was that the most experienced caretakers, so the ones who had a lot of experience in dealing with trauma, they were obviously sent to the people who were injured the most. And they got immediate support from an outside source that was telling them to breathe, to relax, to observe, and so on. So the impact of the trauma was much lower than with those people who had young people standing next to them, and so on and so on. So that's interesting, because it also means that if we are living in a society where we are all capable of observing, where we are conscious, where we acknowledge that we have feelings that we can accept, then there would be a lot less trauma in our society. I think we would have a lot less people traumatized as such. Yeah.
And like you said, isn't there a huge difference between the symptoms, problems, traumatic experience you have that are visible compared to the ones that are not visible? Like you gave the example with the studies, the people maybe that just saw what happened but managed to get out of the situation unhurt in a physical way, maybe have bigger invisible wounds.
Exactly. So that's the interesting part. We have those four bodies always interact with each other. And probably those that were capable of suppressing feelings might have developed more mental issues afterwards. Yeah. I also believe that people who are capable of observing more than others, because they learned that in childhood, were less affected by it all. I remember a situation where there was a bombing at the airport in Brussels, and I was in Brussels at the time. I was on the subway where the first bomb went off. And during the entire day, I was completely relaxed. I was nearly the only one still staying in Brussels because everybody had left the scene immediately. And for some reason, I was quite calm. I found a way to get out of Brussels because I did not have my car there, but there was no way to leave the center by train and so on. And I remember being at ease, finding strangers who would take me home and so on. And when I got to the house, my whole family was severely traumatized because they had heard things from a distance. They had no knowledge of where I was because they could not reach me by phone. And they were less capable of understanding what happened. So I think there is the way of the real knowing, the inner knowing of what is going on, helps to deal with the impact of such an event. Yeah.
And then here also, I think the knowing is not about the words or the mental understanding, but again, the sensations, the feelings that arise. And as we've talked about the polyvagal or the stress reactions in the previous episode, it's the restoring of the balance again, the homeostasis, the searching and especially finding that inner peace, that inner safety, that ventral vagal activity for yourself to digest the energy, to digest the emotions.
That's exactly that. I'll share the story of the bombing that happened in Brussels because it does remind me of that. As much as I was very capable to, in a safe way, get out of the center and to act still because I was not frozen, I was not panicking and so on, what happened was that my mental body had an impact and tried to digest it because weeks after that event, I was dreaming about tsunamis, I was dreaming about nuclear war and so on. So there were very vivid dreams of me fleeing and then finding no shelter. So I realized there and then that I had to mentally, stick with the fact that that event had impacted me. So what I did was basically on a daily basis, I would sit down and journal. I would write down everything that happened that day, and gradually I could feel the impact more. So what I learned was that my mental state helped me to deal with that situation. And when I then allowed my mental flow to transform because I was writing and I was journaling, then I could feel the emotions of that event. And that was like 2 months later on. Yeah. So the link between the emotional state was very clear. And it was very clear that my four bodies were trying to find a balance again from it. So, because I allowed that situation to be. And it's a natural process. Yeah. I never had any help afterwards from a therapist.
Because you know out of your own experience how to take care of, again, what we've talked about before already, the symptoms and the signals that your body was telling you.
Exactly. And perhaps a little bit better than my family at the time, because I remember my mom a couple of years later, she said, that was one of the scariest, and I still dream about that. So I've never had any dreams after that. But the fact that she does means that she's not dealt with the trauma in the same way that I did. And that's okay, but it helps to know how to do it.
And in the story that she's probably, that her system is still trying to digest or rebalance those energies, those bodies, whatever we want to call it.
Yeah, I can see that she still has fears following that event, because the trauma still is free in her body, it's still active, it takes energy. And one of the things is that she says that, she's glad that I'm working closer to home now. Where does that come from? Yeah. So there's still some trace in her body of that traumatic event. And she wasn't even there. So that's how trauma works. Yeah.
Healing is remembering who you were before the story.
Yeah.
And I think this sentence covers a lot about the story that you told already. Yeah. And then if I ask you, Anja, what is healing exactly?
Healing. Healing comes from a place of unconditional love, where we are capable to transform energy in our bodies. And every time that this process takes place, we get closer to who we are, so to the inner witness, that awareness that is very central of our human being. And we are in return capable of healing others. So basically, when you deal with the things in your life that hurt you, and you notice that they do no longer impact you because your strain has left your body or your mind is able to calm down and so on, when you are in that state, that ventral state of safety, that in itself heals others. That in itself will be felt by others. So I had a customer not so long ago who said, I don't know why, but every time I have an appointment with you, the morning I wake up, I already feel relaxed, and it's as if I no longer need the session. Yeah. And in the sharing of experiences, something happens. And then she says, I also feel that because I am now more relaxed, I react different towards my environment. So that is healing. Yeah.
So it's also an inner state, an inner experience, actually.
It is an experience for sure. That's why it's so hard to put words to it. That's at least what I feel. I mean, because it covers so many different things. But if you experience healing, you'll know. Usually what you see is that when healing takes place, the body calms down, the connection through the eyes becomes much stronger, the breathing changes, the shape of the person shifts. Sometimes you see people that are really bent down. You will see them, the head will lift up again and they are able to have a brighter perspective on the world. But there's so many things going on. So how do you phrase it in a sentence? It's difficult, isn't it? What is your definition? Well, how would you phrase it?
How would I phrase it? For me, the healing part is more about the being and the not being healed. The traumatized part, the wounded part is about doing.
Yeah, that's nice.
And so for me, it's always when I have a healing experience, a remembrance experience, I feel like you said in your words, like it's coming closer to who you are. It's not what you do. No, it doesn't have anything to do actually with what you do. And those words came up when you were talking about you with your clients or your patients. It's less important what you do, but how you are.
is all the more important.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And so it's the energy you bring, the energy you bring into a session, you bring into a meeting, you bring into a dinner with friends or family. It's all part of life. And for me, it's about being aware of in which state I am.
Exactly.
And again, having the free will to choose in which state I bring myself.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I mean, we are different healers for different people, because it may feel right for one person and not for the other. I don't think you can pretend to be a healer. People will feel if they have healed or not. So in that sense, it's quite a safe profession, I would say, because, you know, it doesn't work. You cannot sell it if you're not doing it. But it's about being present in the moment and often giving holding space to people as well, so they can have their experience. Yeah.
Bringing your own safety into the room so that others can tap into, it's not even your energy, but can tap into that safety, can experience that and remember it. This is who I am.
Exactly.
This is how it feels to just be me.
Yeah, exactly. It's that safe space that you create together as well. Yeah.
And you said it's an easy profession. You said in between brackets, it's an easy profession. It's not for the faint-hearted, because, like you said, it's not something that you choose to. Actually, you choose everything, but it's not something that by accident happens that you say, okay, this is what I'll do as profession. How did
I start doing this?
Yeah, how did you start doing what you do, or when did you choose? When did you choose to do what you are still doing now?
Well, that's a good one, because I think from a very young age I chose to do this, but I lost it somewhere along the process. I remember that I was always, you know, looking out for others. You know, I would be in the playground in school, and a kid would be crying like at the other side of the playground, and I would be running over. I remember that for sure, but I lost it completely. There was a point where I went into finance, where I closed off my emotions, where I thought, you know, this is a different society, and if I want to be successful, or if I want to thrive as a human being, I need to close off some of that of my own nature and just adapt to what is expected of me. And my health just didn't take that. So luckily I had a body that said, no way, you're not going to do that. Well, here you are. You're not going to be able to walk again for the next 18 months. So, you know, thank God, I would say.
Sit with it.
Sit with it. It was literally sit with it. And in that moment that I realized, you know, when they said you are never going to walk again, I realized there and then that was the end of my ego-centered life. You know, it was very clear for me. I wake up from this and I will do what I am supposed to do. And I knew there and then I would be sharing awareness. I would be helping others to deal with their trauma. I would be sharing my experience of being a highly sensitive person, and not hide that part of me anymore. And that's what I did. Yeah.
And still do.
Still do.
Still do.
Yes. And I hope to be doing it for a long time still. Yeah.
Conditioning is not identity. We're not diving into identity because, like we said, there are so many things where actually it's even harder to find words. But that doesn't matter. But I want to dive into the conditioning.
Yeah.
Because what I know from the things that I've studied with the PNI also, with the science, is that we're very sensitive to conditioning the first 7 or 9 years of our life, and especially the first 1,000 days. Why are we so sensitive to conditioning?
Why are we so sensitive to conditioning? The thing is, because to understand that, we need to understand what identity really means. So we cannot not talk about it, really. It's very hard, this one, because every time I do plant medicine and I go into ceremony, I lose part of my old identity. And I can feel that. It's the getting back to who we really are. But I think as a human being that is open to connection with others, we want to also connect on their level. And it means that you try and look for frequencies that perhaps no longer don't suit you necessarily or don't feel right, but you are curious. That's especially as a child, to understand why it is different for other people. And then we start to accept truths that are not necessarily ours, because staying in a connection that doesn't feel authentic might feel safer than not being in a connection at all. And that's why we adapt. That's why we accept things about us that are not necessarily coming from our own truth. And it goes faster than we think, because we are in a society where a lot of people think that they need to teach the children. And I believe it's the other way around. I believe we need to protect the children. You know? We need to make sure that their rights are heard. We need to make sure that they can express themselves. We need to make sure that they can be free in creating things. And I believe that the adults need to protect that. But it's not always like that, is it now? Yeah.
It's like you give the example, parents and children, teaching, guiding, helping them to understand what's right and what's wrong. It's part of beliefs that are not grown out of the safety, grown out of the nerve system in the ventral vagus state, where you're, like you said, when you're open, when you're playful, when you're curious, and from there on, you can explore who you are. You explore your identity, your energy, what makes you feel alive, what moves you in any way. And like you said, it's not only with parents and children, but with teachers, with school, with actually a lot of almost all of the systems in modern society are built or based on beliefs, and you can be part of it if you follow those beliefs, if you make them your own.
Yeah.
But the more beliefs you make your own that are not yours, the more you become conditioned.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of that you just are who you are.
That's it. And I believe that, today we're doing a better job than a couple of years ago. I see a positive evolution in that. I think that it's very important for people dealing with children to see those children as equals, to not believe that their truth is the only truth, to not think that even though we are perhaps physically vulnerable as a baby, that we necessarily need to educate them in the same way. If we see them as adults, then I think, educating children, is going to make them much more comfortable with who they really are. But luckily, there's a very positive evolution in Belgium, at least today, or in the world today, because there's much more knowledge about the awareness that babies have ever since they are born, or even before they are born. But isn't conditioning also a way of making sure that we don't have to be completely vulnerable and open? Yeah.
It's funny that it's funny what you're saying now, because 20 seconds ago the word dependency came in my mind. And I thought, is it just a way to make people dependent that I don't want to talk about but that society teaches or conditions people to be dependent? Because actually the only reason why as a baby or a child you would assume what your mother or father tells you is right instead of what you feel, the only reason could be that you believe that you are depending on them, that you need them for love, for safety, for food, for teachings, for guidance, for so many things.
It's true, but still it happens it can go really fast, because I remember when I had my godson, I mean, I did not want to have children in the first instance, but I was very closely involved in educating him. And I clearly remember a moment where I said, hang on, hang on, this isn't right. You know, I'm saying things that I did not like. And the way I could turn that around was by focusing on my unconditional love for my godson, by questioning myself and my own beliefs. And that was quite confrontational. I really struggled with that, because I realized that it's not always easy for parents to do so, because they sometimes think that they're doing everything they can to protect the children, but the children don't necessarily need that protection.
Don't they always? Don't always parents and caretakers do what they can with probably the best intention?
Yeah, true.
But very often in reality, they're not capable.
No, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, I hear that a lot here in the practice as well. There's a lot of people coming in, yes, but the intentions of my parents were okay, of course. But you don't do a lot with intentions, yeah? I think for parents today, question yourself, question why you are doing the things that you are doing. And it's often then that you will realize that you're doing that to heal a part in yourself. So do that healing, because the biggest gift that you can give your children is to go in therapy and to deal with the things that have caused certain patterns, especially if you want to protect your children. Then you know something is off. Yeah. Yeah.
Taking up your responsibility. Showing up for yourself.
Yes.
And I also find it, and not only for parents and children, but actually it's the most beautiful gift that you can give yourself in the first place.
Yeah.
But also everyone you meet at any time. It could be your best friend, it could be your partner, it could be your father or mother, or it could be a stranger on the street.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of you taking your responsibility about who you are, how you react, what you feel, what you think, that's, again, the most beautiful gift you can give anyone.
And it's a return to love. So you return to your source. All the black shadow parts are slowly disappearing, and you return to this beautiful source of light who you were in the beginning. And that may sound very spiritual now, but it's also very practical, because it means you will stop judging your neighbor because he said something that hurt you, you know. And that's really visible. That's not just some spiritual cliche.
The divine bitch or the divine bastard.
Exactly. Here we are again.
The return to divinity, but especially like the nuance, and I really enjoy it, and I can tell in your eyes that you enjoy it too.
Yeah.
The bastard and the bitch, because it's also who you are.
Exactly.
And who you will be if you allow to love yourself unconditionally.
Exactly. But even if you choose to be the bitch, be conscious about choosing the bitch at that point of time, because then your intentions are still pure. And that's an important thing for me.
To round up this talk about trauma and conditioning, Anja, is there anything specific that you think about for the listeners now when they are triggered, when something happened inside of themselves, when we were having this talk, that they can do for themselves during this day maybe?
Yeah. There's an easy one that I really like. So think about the person you hate most. Write down all the judgments you have towards that person. For instance, he is, she is, he is, she is. And then you turn the he or the she into I. And you express that. For instance, he is really not good at dealing with pain. Turn that around. I am really not good in dealing with my pain, because that's where the truth is. Judgment towards the others means that there is a pain inside of you that needs to be healed. So do that exercise and go full in. Take the person you really don't like.
No, you really hate.
Exactly.
It's not about dislike.
And at the end, turn it around. Put an I in front and read that again, and read it over and over again, and check for yourself in what way there is truth in those sentences.
And especially take your time to, when you speak those words out loud, take the time for yourself to allow to hear yourself.
Exactly, because in that expression it will make a difference to your body for sure. Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anja.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for joining us on the path of awareness. Pay attention, open up, and remind yourself that awareness is not a destination. It's a way of life. See you in the next episode.